Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today I get to share with you a project for LDRS Creative, and we are going to be using the Pick of the Patch stamp set. This does come with coordinating dies, and it is a pedal pusher die set, which means pedal pusher dies, basically some of the dies die cut out partial elements of your project, and I'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit. But the Pick of the Patch stamp set is a 6x8 stamp set, and it's a layering stamp. Beautiful layered images. You get pumpkins and sunflowers, you get some acorns and a cute little critter. We're going to make a sunflower card today. So we're going to stamp quite a few of the sunflowers, and it's a 3-layer stamp set. On the reverse side it does tell you step by step on how to do your layering. So we're going to start off with our first layer. First layer is the most solid image. I'm just going to place that on my cardstock. I'm going to use a very light ink. The lightest yellow that I have is Yellow Lantern, and you want to use the lightest ink that you have with the first layer, the most solid layer. Okay, I'm going to ink that up. We'll stamp this a few times. And it stamps beautifully. The more times you stamp it, the darker it gets. Mine looks a little blotchy, but it's because my ink pad's pretty juicy. So once it dries, it'll even out. I just trimmed down my paper because we're going to do 4 in each corner. So we'll just double stamp that, turn our paper, and then repeat the process. I want 5 sunflowers in total, and actually later on I end up stamping a few more. Once our first row is done, we're going to grab another piece of cardstock and just stamp 1 more in that bottom corner. Okay, next we're going to bring in our second layer. Now these are pretty easy to line up. They don't have to line up perfectly. There's little points on the second layer that you can line up with the points on the first layer, but they don't have to be perfect. Mine weren't perfect, and I think the flowers just turned out gorgeous anyway because of the way the images stamp. But I'm just going to pick that up with the lid of my MISC, and then we're going to use our second color, which is a medium tone yellow, and this is Dandelion. All the inks that I'm using today are from LDRS Creative, and they are hybrid inks, so they stamp beautifully. That's our second layer. We're going to grab our square sheet, put that in there. Make sure I push it up against the corner so my second image stamps beautifully. And again, the more you stamp it, the darker the color gets. That first one looks a little blotchy, but again, once it dries, the color evens out. Just turn our paper and stamp this one a couple more. I love sunflowers. I think they're just so pretty. Okay, now we're going to stamp our third flower. Now the third flower, I'm going to bring in a brown ink. It's a golden brown, and so this one here is called Iced Tea. We're going to line up our third image. There's a circle on the third image, and I'm lining that up with the circle on my stamp flower there. Lines up pretty easily. I meant to grab Iced Tea, and I actually grabbed Coffee Bean. So those 2 flower centers have a Coffee Bean, a darker brown ink. This is my Iced Tea here, and you can see the difference. I kind of stamped over the Coffee Bean on that one, and then here I think this is a lot lighter color, more golden, you can see. But variation in flowers is a good thing. I don't mind that. We're going to grab our last sunflower and stamp the center of that one with our third layer. And I think that looks great. Okay, there's 2 flower centers for the sunflowers, which I think is wonderful. One of them is a plaid, and then the other one is a circular detailed one. So we're going to use that one and stamp on the center of all of our flowers. I'm just lining up the circles again with the circles that we stamped. And then for the center, I'm going to bring in my Coffee Bean ink and stamp that with the darkest brown ink. Isn't that so pretty? I just love that. We're going to do the same thing to the rest of the flowers here. Just stamping that in the center. Okay. Now with the pedal pusher dies, they actually die cut out on your cardstock. So if you wanted to put flowers on your cardstock, you would die cut them out on your directly on your panel, because it doesn't die cut out the entire flower. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but we're going to stamp our critter real fast. This little guy is so cute, and we're going to use the same brown inks that we use for the sunflower. This is the first layer of our critter, and I'm stamping in with my lightest brown, which is iced tea. I'm going to stamp in a few times. There is a die that will cut out his little paw that you could layer, and I thought that was cute. So we're going to need 2 of these. I'm lining up the second layer, and we're going to use our darker brown ink, which is the coffee bean. And then we're going to stamp that a few times. It causes a little bit of dimension and shading, which is super nice. And I did decide to stamp one more for good measure. I was afraid with the little happy face and the eyes on the third layer that in case I didn't get it perfectly lined up, I have that extra one as backup. Okay, the third layer is the happy face, so we're going to use the black ink to stamp that. I'm using the Raven ink pad here, and I'm using the picture on the back of the stamp set as a guide, and I thought this would be difficult, but believe it or not, that little smile lines up pretty easily with the critter. So we'll ink up our smiley face in the eyes and stamp that, and you can see it's beautiful. We're going to flip her around and stamp it on our second one. We didn't have to do that because all we're going to use on that one is the little paw. But third one was the same, lined up beautifully. Okay, I trimmed down another square because I want to stamp some leaves now, and I wanted to get all 4 corners, so trimming down a square was the easiest for me to do. I ended up stamping 6 of the leaves. Now the leaves have 2 of the same leaves, one of them solid and then the other one has a gingham pattern on it. And so I'm stamping the first leaf, the solid leaf, with my key lime pie ink pad. It's the lightest green I'm going to use, and then I'm just turning after each stamp. We'll do one more here in the corner. Actually, we end up stamping 6 of these. Second layer, we're going to bring in the plaid leaf, just line it up and add our darker ink, which is the Evergreen ink pad. These 2 colors I think create a really neat effect. I fell in love with the gingham pattern. In fact, I ended up stamping, there is the same pattern of flower center. I am going to end up stamping that with that image in just a little bit. Okay, we're going to take the coordinating die. This is the petal pusher die, what I was talking about. I'm going to line up all my dies and get them ready for die cutting. The die set is available. I'll link it down below. But it's nice because there's layering elements to it. So there's the leaf, and it does have the little paw that you can cut out. I'm just going to tape these down, and then I'm going to take the little circle and cut out the flower center. So technically I really didn't have to stamp the whole flower to cut out the flower center. You could just take the center stamp, basically it would be the flower center, the 4th layer that we did, and stamp that separately. But I just chose to do it all at once. And here's where I'm going to take that paw die and die cut out his little paw. I think it's his little paw. His little hand. Okay, I'm going to die cut this and show you what this does. Okay, there's the flower center, and then once I'm just going to line this up a second time, have that ready to go. But you can see it doesn't die cut out the entire flower. What it does is die cuts out the petal portions, and so you can fluff them up to create a beautiful dimension in your cards without adding dimension. I think it's the neatest thing. But if you do want to cut it out fully, it's so easy to do. All you do is take your scissors and just nip along the die cut portion, and it'll come out beautifully. And that's what I'm going to do to all 5 of my flowers today. That die that you see there on the bottom will die cut out the entire flower in case you want to do that, but it leaves a different shape on it. But I like the shape of this one, and I like that you can fluff up the petals. So once everything is die cut, you can see here, I had already layered one of my flower centers to my flower, and this is where I decided to stamp the flower center, and then using that circle die, I'm going to die cut out 5 of them. And this, I think, matches with my leaves and is flows a little bit more nicer. The other flower center is gorgeous, but I just think this is going to flow a little bit more nice. So I'm going to die cut out all my flower centers, and then now we're going to layer them right on top of our sunflowers here. And I love the contrast too. Having that white in that background and the flower center makes it stand out a little bit more. I did layer with foam tape the little squirrel's paw, so it has a little bit of dimension also. So there's my sunflowers. I'm going to flip over my leaves and add some foam tape behind there, and then we are going to create our background. I'm going to use one of the pattern papers from the Sweater Weather 6x6 paper pack. I love this wood grain pattern, and I think it goes perfect with those sunflowers. So we're going to trim down a panel. I'm going to trim it down so it will be 5.5 inches long, or wide I should say, and it's 3.25 inches tall. We're going to make a landscape style card today. This is going to go on the very bottom of our card base. I'm going to use my tape runner, and we're going to adhere that to the very bottom. I had just a little bit of excess hanging over. I'm going to use my scissors and trim that off. And then we're going to kind of arrange how we want our flowers. I wanted my flowers to be over the seam of that wood grain pattern paper. And then I wanted my critter to be just peeking out just above the sunflowers. I thought that would be so cute. And he is so easy to tuck behind there. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to go ahead and add some more foam tape behind my sunflowers and pop them up on my card and add everything else. For my sentiment in the stamp set, there's a sentiment that says, "I always pick you," and I thought it went perfect with the sunflowers. So I'm going to stamp that with my black ink here on some white cardstock, and then using my scissors, I'm going to trim it down, kind of block it off, but I decided to fishtail the end, so I'm going to leave that right side a little bit longer. Then I'll just take my smaller scissors and fishtail the right side there. We're going to figure out where we're going to put this, and I think right between the flowers is going to look fantastic. I think there is a perfect spot. So we're going to add some foam tape behind it and pop it there. We're going to sparkle up our flowers with some glitter, and then for finishing touches I decided to bring in some little yellow flower sequins. I lost one of my leaves. I didn't actually secure that down. Okay. These are little yellow flower sequins. I've had these in my stash for quite a while, but I thought they went perfect, kind of pulling up that yellow. I'm going to add a few here and there. And that finishes off my card for today, guys. This is the Pick of the Patch stamp set from LDRS Creative. If you're interested in it, links are down below as always. And I got to adjust that. It was crooked. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I wish you a fantastic day, and we will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.